The air in my grandfather's library was thick with the scent of aged parchment and the faint tang of herbs hanging from the rafters. Dust motes danced in the slanted sunlight that filtered through the high windows, illuminating the countless scrolls and tomes that lined the shelves. This was my sanctuary, the place where I, Ariadne, granddaughter of Asclepius, spent my days poring over ancient texts in search of knowledge that could heal not just the body, but the soul. I was no ordinary healer. My grandfather's divine blood flowed through my veins, granting me a gift, or perhaps a curse, of understanding the ailments of both mortals and gods. But it was not enough to mend broken bones or soothe fevers. I yearned to heal the deeper wounds, the ones inflicted by the capricious whims of the gods themselves. That day I was searching for a remedy for a young boy who had been struck mute after witnessing a terrible storm sent by Zeus. His mother had begged me to help him, and I had promised to try. But as I sifted through the scrolls, my fingers brushed against something I had never seen before. A brittle, yellowed parchment tucked away in the shadowed corner of a shelf. The scroll was ancient, its edges frayed, and its ink faded. As I unrolled it carefully, I felt a strange tingling in my fingertips, as though the parchment itself was alive. The script was written in a language I had never encountered, yet somehow I could understand it. The words spoke of a ritual, one that could reverse the curses of the gods. My heart quickened as I read further. The scroll mentioned a name that sent a shiver down my spine. Medusa. I knew the stories, of course. Everyone did. Medusa, the Gorgon. With snakes for hair whose gaze could turn men to stone. She was a monster, a cautionary tale told to frighten children, but the scroll told a different story. It spoke of a priestess, beautiful and devout, who had been betrayed by the very goddess she served. Fair Athena, in her wrath, had cursed Medusa, transforming her into a creature of terror. The scroll claimed that Medusa's curse could be undone, but only through a ritual requiring 3 sacred items: a feather from the wings of Pegasus, a tear from the goddess Athena, and a shard of the mirror used by Perseus to slay her. I sat back, my mind racing. Could it be true? Could Medusa's curse truly be lifted? And if so, what would it mean for the world? The gods were not known for their mercy, and I had no doubt that tampering with their divine will would bring their wrath upon me. But as I thought of Medusa, not as a monster, but as a woman wronged, I felt a surge of determination. If there was even a chance that I could right this ancient injustice, I had to try. I rolled the scroll carefully and tucked it into my satchel. My journey would begin at the island of Sarpedon, where Medusa was said to reside. I knew the path would be fraught with danger, but I also knew that I could not turn away. As I stepped out of the library and into the fading light of the day, I felt the weight of the gods' gaze upon me. They would not make this easy, but I was Ariadne, granddaughter of Asclepius, and I would not be deterred. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of the sea. Somewhere, far across the waves, Medusa waited, and I would find her. The journey to the island of Sarpedon was neither swift nor easy. The seas were treacherous, and the winds seemed to conspire against me, as though the gods themselves were testing my resolve. But I, Ariadne, granddaughter of Asclepius, was no stranger to hardship. My grandfather had taught me that healing often required sacrifice, and I was prepared to pay whatever price was necessary. When the island finally came into view, it was as foreboding as the tales had described. Jagged cliffs rose from the churning. Waves, their peaks shrouded in mist. The air was thick with the scent of salt and something else, something ancient and primal. I could feel it in my bones, a low hum that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath my feet. I guided my small boat to a rocky cove where the water was calmer. As I stepped onto the shore, I felt a chill run down my spine. The island was eerily silent, save for the distant cry of a seabird. The ground was littered with the remnants of ships, broken masts, shattered hulls, and the bleached bones of those who had dared to come before me. I tightened my grip on my satchel, where the ancient scroll lay safely tucked away. The ritual required 3 sacred items, but first I needed to find Medusa. The path to her lair was not hard to find. It was marked by statues, Dozens of them, frozen in poses of terror and despair. Men, women, even animals, all turned to stone by the Gorgon's gaze. I forced myself to look away, focusing instead on the task at hand. I met her gaze, my voice steady. I do not claim to be worthy, but I believe that even the gods can be moved by compassion. For a moment, Hebe said nothing. Then she stepped aside, gesturing toward the grove. Very well, she said. But know this, Pegasus is not easily approached. If you can earn his trust, the feather is yours. If not, she smiled, though there was no warmth in it. You may find yourself falling from a great height. I entered the grove, the golden leaves rustling softly in the breeze. Pegasus stood at the center, his coat gleaming like polished marble, his wings folded gracefully at his sides. He watched me with intelligent eyes, his gaze piercing yet not unkind. I approached slowly, my hands open to show I meant no harm. Great Pegasus, I said, I come in peace. I seek only a single feather to right a wrong that has plagued the world for too long. Pegasus snorted, his breath warm against my skin. Then, to my surprise, he lowered his head, allowing me to stroke his mane. I felt a surge of gratitude and carefully plucked a single feather from his wing. It was softer than I had imagined, its edges shimmering with an otherworldly light. As I turned to leave, Hebe appeared once more. You have done well, mortal, she said. But your journey is far from over. Athena will not be so easily swayed. I nodded, tucking the feather safely into my satchel. I know, I said, but I must try. The next task was to obtain a tear from Athena. The goddess of wisdom and war was not known for her mercy, and I knew this would be the greatest challenge. Yet, her temple stood at the summit of the mountain, its columns carved with scenes of battle and triumph. I entered the temple, my footsteps echoing in the vast empty hall. Athena stood at the far end, her armor gleaming, her eyes like storm clouds. Ariadne, she said, her voice cold and commanding. You dare to seek my tears? Do you not know the price of such a request? I bowed low, my heart pounding. Goddess, I seek only to undo a curse that was unjustly cast. Medusa was once your priestess, loyal and devout. Surely you can see the wrong that was done to her. Athena's expression darkened. Medusa betrayed me, she said. She brought shame upon my temple, and her punishment was just. But was it? I asked, my voice trembling. Or was it a punishment born of anger and pride? Even the wisest among us can be blinded by emotion. Athena's eyes flashed, and for a moment I feared she would strike me down. But then she smiled, a slow, calculating smile. Very well, she said. If you can answer my riddle, I will grant you a tear. But if you fail, you will share Medusa's fate. I swallowed hard but nodded. I accept your challenge. Athena's riddle was this. I am not alive, yet I grow. I do not have lungs, yet I need air. What am I? I thought for a moment, my mind racing. Then it came to me. Fire, I said. Athena's smile widened. Correct, she said, and with that a single tear slid down her cheek. I caught it in a small vial, its surface shimmering with divine light. You have proven yourself clever, Athena said. But beware, Ariadne. The final task will test not your mind, but your courage. The last item was a shard of the mirror used by Perseus to slay Medusa. According to Medusa, it was hidden in the labyrinth beneath the mountain, guarded by the Minotaur. The entrance to the labyrinth was a gaping maw in the side of the mountain, its walls lined with torches that cast flickering shadows on the stone. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, the air cool and damp against my skin. The labyrinth was a maze of twisting passages and dead ends, its walls covered in carvings. That seemed to shift and change as I passed. I could hear the distant sound of the Minotaur's roar, a deep guttural sound that sent shivers down my spine. As I ventured deeper, I began to notice something strange. The carvings on the walls depicted not just the Minotaur, but Medusa as, well, they told a story of betrayal and sacrifice, of a curse that was not merely a punishment but a means of containing a far greater evil. At last, I reached the heart of the labyrinth. The Minotaur stood before me, his massive form casting a shadow that seemed to fill the chamber. His eyes glowed with a fierce primal light, and his breath came in heavy, ragged gasps. I raised my hands, showing that I meant no harm. "I do not wish to fight you," I said. "I seek only the mirror shard to undo a great wrong." The Minotaur snorted, his massive head lowering as if to charge, but then he paused, his gaze shifting to the carvings on the walls. For a moment he seemed almost thoughtful. Then, to my astonishment, he stepped aside, revealing a small alcove. Within it lay the mirror shard, its surface cracked and jagged, yet still reflecting the faint light of the torches. As I ventured deeper into the island, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist around me. I could feel eyes watching me from the darkness, though I saw nothing. The whispers of the wind grew louder, forming words I could almost understand. "Turn back," they seemed to say. "Turn back or share their fate." But I could not turn back. Not now. At last, I reached the entrance to Medusa's lair, a cavernous opening in the side of a cliff, its mouth framed by jagged rocks that resembled teeth. The air inside was damp and heavy, and the walls glistened with moisture. I lit a torch, its flickering light casting long shadows on the stone. I had not gone far when I heard it, a low, hissing sound that sent a shiver down my spine. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound grew louder, closer, until I could see the source, a mass of writhing serpents, their eyes gleaming in the torchlight. And then she appeared. Medusa was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Her hair was a nest of living snakes, their tongues flicking in and out as they hissed at me. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, those infamous eyes, glowed with an otherworldly light. I raised my hands, showing that I meant no harm. "I am Ariadne," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to steady it. "I have come to help you." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Medusa spoke, her voice a low, melodic whisper that seemed to echo in my mind. "Help me?" she said, her tone laced with bitterness. "No one can help me. I am cursed, a monster to be feared and despised." "You are not a monster," I replied, my voice growing stronger. "You were wronged, and I believe I can undo the curse that binds you." Medusa's eyes narrowed and the snakes in her hair coiled tighter. "You speak of things you do not understand," she said. "The gods do not forgive, and they do not forget." "Perhaps not," I admitted, "but I am willing to try. Will you let me?" For a long moment she said nothing. Then slowly she nodded. "Very well," she said. "But know this, if you fail, you will share the fate of all who have come before you." I swallowed hard but did not look away. "I understand." Medusa led me deeper into the cavern, to a chamber where the walls were covered in ancient carvings. They depicted her story, her life as a priestess, her betrayal by Athena, and her transformation into the Gorgon. "The ritual you seek," she said, "requires 3 sacred items: a feather from the wings of Pegasus, a tear from the goddess, Athena, and a shard of the mirror used by Perseus to slay me." I nodded, recalling the words of the scroll. "Where can I find these things?" Medusa's expression darkened. "The feather lies in the stables of Pegasus on Mount Olympus. The tear you must wrest from Athena herself, and the mirror shard." She hesitated, her gaze distant. "It is hidden in the labyrinth beneath the mountain, guarded by the Minotaur." I felt a chill at her words. Each task seemed more impossible than the last. But I had come this far, and I would not turn back now. "Thank you," I said. "I will return with what you need." Medusa studied me for a long moment, her glowing eyes piercing into my soul. "You are either very brave or very foolish," she said at last. "But if you succeed, perhaps there is hope for me yet." As I left the cavern and made my way back to my boat, I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. The statues seemed to follow me with their sightless eyes, and the whispers of the wind grew louder, more insistent. "Turn back," they said. "Turn back before it is too late." But I could not turn back. Not now. The journey to Mount Olympus was a test of both my resolve and my wits. The mountain loomed ahead, its peak shrouded in clouds that seemed to pulse with divine energy. I could feel the weight of the gods' gaze upon me as I climbed, each step bringing me closer to their domain. The air grew thinner and the path steeper, but I pressed on, driven by the promise I had made to Medusa. The first task was to retrieve a feather from the wings of Pegasus. The stables of the winged horse were said to be hidden within a grove of golden trees, their leaves shimmering like sunlight on water. As I approached, I could hear the distant sound of hooves striking stone, a rhythmic echo that seemed to reverberate through the earth. The grove was guarded by a figure I recognized at once, Hebe, the goddess of youth and cupbearer to the gods. She stood at the entrance, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes sharp and calculating. "Mortal," she said, her voice like the chiming of bells, "you tread on sacred ground. What brings you here?" I bowed my head, showing the respect due to a goddess. "I seek a feather from the wings of Pegasus," I said. "It is for a ritual to undo a great injustice." Hebe's eyes narrowed. "And what makes you think you are worthy of such a gift?" I took the shard, my hands trembling. "Thank you," I said, though I was not sure if the Minotaur could understand me. As I turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of unease. The labyrinth seemed to shift around me, the walls closing in, the torches flickering and dying. I ran, my heart pounding, until at last I burst into the open air, but my relief was short-lived. As I stepped out of the labyrinth, I was confronted by Athena, her expression grim. "You have the items," she said, "but know this, if you proceed, you risk unleashing a force far greater than you can imagine." Medusa's curse was not merely a punishment, it was a seal containing a primordial evil. "If you break it, the consequences will be dire." I hesitated, the weight of her words pressing down on me. But then I thought of Medusa, of the pain and suffering she had endured. "I understand the risks," I said, "but I must try." Athena studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well," she said, "but remember, the choice is yours, and so too are the consequences." As I made my way back to the island of Sarpedon, I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. The gods' gaze seemed to follow me, their whispers echoing in my mind. "Turn back," they said. "Turn back before it is too late." But I could not turn back. Not now. The sea was calm as I approached Sarpedon once more, a stark contrast to the turbulent emotions churning within me. Athena's warning echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of the potential consequences of my actions. Yet I held firm to the belief that Medusa deserved freedom, that her suffering had gone on long enough. The island greeted me with the same eerie silence, the stone statues silent witnesses to my return. I made my way to the cavern, my steps heavy with the weight of the sacred items and the responsibility they carried. Medusa awaited me in the chamber adorned with the carvings of her life. The snakes that formed her hair hissed softly, their eyes glowing with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. "You have returned," she said, her voice a melodic whisper that seemed to resonate with the ancient stones around us. "I have," I replied, holding up the satchel. "The feather, the tear, and the shard. All that is required." A flicker of something akin to hope crossed Medusa's face, quickly replaced by a solemn acceptance. "Then let us begin," she said. I laid out the items on a flat stone, the feather shimmering, the tear glistening, and the shard reflecting the torchlight. Following the instructions from the ancient scroll, I began the ritual. The words were strange and powerful, resonating with a force that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. As I chanted, the chamber grew brighter, the air thrumming with energy. The sacred items began to glow, their light merging into a single beam that focused on Medusa. The snakes in her hair writhed wildly, then slowly began to fall away like leaves shedding from a tree in autumn. Medusa's skin, once pale and translucent, regained its color. Her eyes, those terrifying eyes, softened, losing their otherworldly glow and becoming human. She looked at me, her expression one of disbelief and wonder. I am free," she whispered, her voice trembling. But the transformation came at a price. As Athena had warned, the breaking of the curse weakened the barrier that held back the primordial force. The ground began to shake, and a low, guttural roar echoed from the depths of the earth. Medusa's eyes widened in alarm. "It is as Athena said," she exclaimed. "The curse was a seal, now it is breaking." I felt a surge of fear, But Medusa's gaze was resolute. "There is a way," she said, "but it requires a sacrifice." She explained that she could contain the force once more, but only by willingly taking on a new form, a guardian. Neither human nor monster, but something in between. She would sacrifice her newfound freedom to protect the world from the chaos that threatened to consume it. Tears welled in my eyes, but I knew she was right. "I understand," I said. "Do what you must." Medusa smiled, a sad, beautiful smile. "Thank you, Ariadne," she said, "for seeing me as I truly am, not as the world has judged me." She closed her eyes and a new transformation began. Her body shimmered, growing taller, more ethereal. Her skin took on the texture of polished stone, yet retained a warmth that radiated outward. Her hair, once snakes, became flowing strands of light, like the aurora borealis. When she opened her eyes, they glowed with a gentle, protective light. She was no longer the cursed Gorgon, nor the priestess she once was. She was something more. The shaking stopped. The roar subsided. The primordial force receded, sealed once more by Medusa's willing sacrifice. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, but I felt a profound sense of peace. The world was safe, and Medusa, though forever changed, was finally at peace. Then a voice spoke, filled with both awe and respect. "Medusa," it said. It was Athena, her presence filling the chamber. "You have shown courage and selflessness beyond measure. For this you shall be honored." Athena raised her hand, and a beam of light enveloped Medusa. Slowly she began to ascend, rising toward the ceiling of the cavern, then through the rock itself, as if it were no more than mist. I watched, tears streaming down my face, as Medusa rose into the night sky. Her form shimmered, growing brighter and brighter, until she became a constellation, a new pattern of stars that shone with a radiant, protective light. Athena turned to me, her expression softer than I had ever seen it. "You have done well, Ariadne," she said. "You have shown that even the gods can be wrong and that compassion can triumph over wrath." I bowed my head, humbled by her words. "Thank you, goddess," I said. "But it was Medusa who saved us all." Athena nodded. "Indeed, and her sacrifice will never be forgotten." I returned to my home, forever changed by my journey. I wrote down the story of Medusa, ensuring that her true tale would be known. The scroll became a legend, passed down through generations, a testament to the power of redemption and the courage of a woman who chose to sacrifice everything to save the world. I continued my work as a healer, but with a newfound understanding of the complexities of divine justice and the importance of seeing beyond the surface, of recognizing the humanity even in those deemed monstrous. And every night, I would look up at the constellation of Medusa, shining brightly in the heavens, a reminder that even the darkest fates can be transformed through acts of courage and selflessness, and that true justice lies not in punishment, but in understanding and forgiveness. The world continued to turn, and other myths and legends would continue to have their tales revised and expanded upon by the mortals. But perhaps the story of Medusa would bring into question more of the gods' decisions. Perhaps there were others, waiting for their redemption.